call to order the December 3rd town board meeting. All those please make the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move we approve the agenda as in order.
Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. Okay, consent agenda. Anybody wants to pull the items from the consent agenda?
I don't know where that came from.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion is carried. For the people in the audience, on the consent agenda, the caucus is set for January 7th at 6 p.m. and the snow date is January 1st. Okay, reports. Emergency medical services report. Committee reports. Anything with fire?
Nope, we haven't met.
Anything with library?
Nobody getting the reports.
And nothing to do with the town association. Okay. Chairman's report, I'm going to keep this very brief tonight. On January 8th, we're hosting a meeting here at the town hall. It has to do with the adjacent municipalities and the concerns over the traffic on County Road 8 from here to New Richmond. There's a lot of accidents and a lot of concern with that. We're hosting that on January 8th. At the last meeting, I did meet with the city and our attorney with respect to Old Highway 35. We had a good meeting on that. We need to get further direction from the city with respect to what they want to do on their density and get with their attorney to figure out how we can start framing something up that I can bring back to the board. Chairman's report, road report. We had the county last month. We got through a couple of blizzards. Tomorrow, with Tim's help, we're going to go and 4, perhaps 5 trucks and plow all the slush off the road while it's still above freezing. So maybe that will help with what we're doing. All right, public comment. You can speak on any items not on the agenda. If anyone wants to speak on public comment. Okay? All right. I'm going to move up the discussion and action on Hartman's Development rezoning request. And I'll throw that out to the board for discussion and or a motion up or down if we want to move it to the floor for discussion.
What do you want to do with his request for denial because he owns 20%?
I think to date we've done everything by the book. This is what I think. I think if we want to have an attorney's opinion on that again, we can. But comments were made that they'll have their attorney look at it.
Mr. Chairman,
If yes.
could we pass on that until we have more discussion? Because I think, you know, the person who's putting that in may have a different decision depending on how we come out.
Absolutely.
Well, it's already in now, so we have
Yeah,
to accept it. But well, we need a motion then to approve it or deny it, so we can open it for discussion.
Can we wait on it as a topic?
Well, are you saying approve or deny the rezoning request?
Right, you need a
Yeah.
motion so that we can.
I see.
So we can get it to
So
the
you can
floor.
get it to the floor to
So we can
discuss it.
discuss what if anything we want to do.
Okay, that's understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve or deny the rezoning request so we can get it to the floor for discussion?
I would move approval of rezoning the entire Hartman property to commercial light industrial.
Okay, do I hear a second to that?
I'll second it.
Second that, okay. Okay. Now let's move to the floor for discussion. There were a lot of comments tonight, and I guess I'm going to be very curious what the board's thoughts are on this.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Okay, I'd just like to make two comments on it. I think, to me, the there's the general berming, fencing, screening issue, and that needs to be resolved to the satisfaction of, the property owners. But I think, secondly, what I like about the, after looking at closely at the commercial, industrial, light industrial classification is that essentially it allows us, to control anything beyond commercial. And I think philosophically, what I think, what we want to do, and I think that we should make it as part of the record, is that whatever is done has to be consistent with the expectations of the homeowners who moved there in the first place, expecting it to be commercially zoned. In other words, in terms of noise, lighting, etc., all the things that will create nuisance issues. And so obviously that would mean that manufacturing couldn't happen there. There's a lot of other things in there that just couldn't happen. But I think that's a commitment that as the board we should make. That we're essentially now, the reason I say that is because I think the HVAC situation, to me, well designed, fits in pretty close to the cabinetry, with the it's already in the commercial. It wouldn't be noisier. It wouldn't be wouldn't add more light, anything like that. There's no more activity. So I think those are the kinds of things. In other words, you want a situation where it's essentially, you can't define everything, in terms of what's in commercial, but whatever is in there, should fit within, what the expectations were. And so I think that's the thing. And how we exactly define that, I think, is probably the most critical piece. That I think is something that we should commit, to the neighborhood. That's my opinion on it.
Further discussion?
Yes, please.
Mary?
So while I hear what you're saying, my concern is that the comprehensive plan is set out and it's been in place since 2010. 2006, sorry. Gosh, yeah, 2006. And in the comprehensive plan, it's clearly been zoned for future zoning to be commercial light industrial. So that had gone through very rigorous studies, and a lot of money was paid to look at that area and determine what it should be. And now it went through at least a year or two here, and then the state for approval, for final approval. So we're looking at a situation where if it were to become light industrial or commercial, then that's actually in line with the future comprehensive plan of that land.
Yes.
So, and I'm not sure if it had to go through the county as well, you wouldn't have been on at the time, but I don't know. So, when I look at rezoning items, the first thing I look at is what does the comprehensive plan show? Because people that are a lot smarter than me made up this plan for reasons, purposeful reasons, and intentionally took their time, years, to figure this out. So I am very hesitant to not follow the comprehensive plan. And this would, putting it as to light industrial commercial, would follow the comprehensive plan. And I personally feel will give us, as an adjoining property, the ability to have more control as to what's going to go in my backyard.
Yes.
Because all my kids will be staring at it out their windows. So, I think that, I feel that I would rather have control of that than anything can go back there with commercial without any control. It can go through and I will have no idea
unless I'm sitting here or paying attention.
Right out of our comp plan for the principles that should govern the location of industry are sites that are easily accessible to main arterials, roads, to provide for convenient movement of commercial vehicles and reduce traffic on local roads. As flat as available, local terrain permits. Sites that are well drained and segregated and buffered as far as possible from residential areas. So I mean that everything kind of fits that too. And with the comp plan saying that we could rezone it down the road if we chose to. All those things fit as long as we buffer, which as I said before, it's a requirement anyway. It's not something that is negotiable. It's something that has to be done.
And it's a lighter use,
And it's a lighter use.
which is a part that's not being, for some reason, I don't know why,
I would rather
that's
have
hard to
a,
see, but it is, it's a lighter use.
I would rather have
zoning.
an HVAC shop than a hotel or a
I
motel
don't want all the annex
or a bar and
residential.
restaurant
Or storage units.
or more
Which
storage units.
seems to be.
Because quite honestly, I'm tired of, and I like that you said before that you're out of that because there's more jobs and more money involved with having businesses like that in there. And if these businesses are willing to put nice fronts on them and they're not all pole barn buildings, I like that too.
And to speak to the berm and the tree thing a little bit, completely understand their point. All I can do is give my word at this point that when we get to this, I'm gonna cooperate with the board on these individual lot sales, because that seems like a layer of regulation that is gonna pop up at that moment, within reason, obviously. Lenore's in a little different spot because she doesn't really have a lot next to her. So I can address that directly with Lenore outside of this context where her and I could meet and say, Lenore, what are your expectations? Because I'd be happy to put trees there in the spring because there's no lot to be sold there. So she, of all people, has kind of the most vulnerability, wouldn't you say? As opposed to some of these other folks that have property that, we'll have to get to that lot sale and then we're going to move our black dirt to there. And to Doug's point, we're going to look at this and say, how much dirt do we have? We'll do our earthwork calcs at that time, so we can give you a 4-foot berm, an 8-foot berm, whatever. I can tell you there's a lot of black dirt.
And here's one other thing I want to just point out, and then I'm going to be quiet. Working in real estate, I can personally say that I'm confident in saying that if we're going to deal with any developer in our backyard, I would want it to be Mike Hartman. Because all of your developments are beautifully done, and you are a man of your word. And I know that because I've dealt with you in real estate. And I can tell you in real estate, there's a lot of crooks. Look at Kernan. I'm just saying. Just kidding. I'm kidding. Strike that. Don't put that in there. Black that out. It was a joke.
Kernan, just see me later. It's right here.
I built with you up. Obviously, Kate, I didn't build with Mike. I built with you. But his developments are done well. They're well thought out. And I've never seen him say he's going to do something and not follow through. So I am more confident that would happen with Mike than in other situations with other builders out there that just don't even finish their projects.
I was gonna say, I don't even know Mike. I've never done business with you, I don't know you. But it sounds like he's being really reasonable, trying to work with you guys. I think any developer could be in there, and really, I think he's being more reasonable than he probably needs to be honest with you. And I think he's really gonna work.
I'm trying hard not to overpromise.
And with,
So that Lenore doesn't say, Mike, you said
Right.
you'd give me 200 trees.
you don't want 30-foot spaded pine trees put in. I get that too,
So-
because there's
so
that money
planning-
aspect.
Yeah, so.
But with that said, I hope that you, moving forward, you kind of keep working with them and having some.
I think there's a big element of reasonableness, okay? I also know that there's a youth there that has small children, and I understand that, and I really empathize with that because I've watched it happen in this region where someone said, oh, yeah, and then, boy, people have never come through on it. I worked in some of these, and Mike's built in many of these developments that I've worked in. They've all been pretty much upscale. And I know a lot of people who have his homes, and I have never seen anything myself, even though I'm not in real estate right now because I'm totally fried from it. But, you know, I've never seen him back out of his word in some awkward or horrible or ungentlemanly manner. So I think I have to agree with that issue. I think the biggest thing from a common sense perspective is just on the residential side, we don't want to see the business side. On the business side, they could really give a crap, they're just going to do their thing. But they don't want it to be ugly either, you know? So I think we can work through this, I truly do, but I think we also.
And I think it's more negotiable being industrial commercial than it would be just commercial.
I think
If it's just
there's
commercial,
more-
you could have
there's more
4 gas
ways to
stations. in there.
regulate what's going on and control that better. However, having said that, I feel very badly for those with the berm up on that end because it just kind of like happened, you know? And it was very difficult to follow what was happening quick enough before it was done, before you got home from work at night, you know, the next day or something. So I think we just need to be really careful of outlining and being very clear so that it's very clear to all of us, what does that 20% actually really mean, you know? Because I think that Jeremy has a very valid point, and we just need to be very clear on what was the intention and everything. I mean, I'm talking simplified. I like seeing things in first grade language. And I have a master's in a lot of things, so I want to see it simplified.
And if someone's gonna protest this,
Yeah.
it's gonna set this back another month, and then maybe another month, and another month, and
So
another
it's like,
month. And in the
let's
meantime,
get
your
to it.
trees aren't growing on your property.
You know what?
So I mean,
Trees grow. You put them in, they grow, whatever. I'm not worried about
but if you wanna get
something.
something going.
Right. So let's address what we
I'm
can,
not-
maybe.
Tim?
I'm gonna give a little history lesson, just for everybody to bring us up to speed on why we're at where we're at with this rezoning in the comp plan. In the comp plan we developed in the 1980s, that was printed in 1988, we talked about rezoning all of Highway 12 commercial. And commercial was done in 1959 in the town of Hudson. There was zoning done before the county. St. Croix County had zoning. And I could never figure out why we got zoning in the town of Hudson before the county did. And the forefathers at that time, when the interstate opened in 1959, they thought, you know, there's gonna be a lot of business moved to this area along the interstate. So they made the stuff down by the interstate commercial and the stuff by the railroad tracks industrial. And that was it. And then in the 80s, we talked about, well, and if you're putting the Highway 12 in as a 4-lane, maybe you ought to do commercial all the way along the interstate. So when we did the comp plan in 2006, we said, we're not gonna force people to zone their land to something different than what it is today, which is ag residential. If they wanna come in and rezone it, they can request that. So in the comp plan, we'll put in there, and by that time, in the 1980s, Marty and Rich kept promising they were gonna put a gas station, which is where the Holiday Station is, and it was gonna be a Sinclair. And I kept saying to Marty, why aren't you building your gas station? He said, we don't have enough traveling public to make that work. It'll never make it. And as a consequence, when all the rest of that land behind there, as it started to develop by the truck stop, was all that commercial on the back, none of it was selling. And the reason for it was, you're not gonna get ever enough traveling public back there for a business to make it. So the town board had to come up with a new classification of commercial light industrial, because we didn't have one, and said, what are we willing to accept as commercial light industrial that isn't industrial, but just a step up from commercial, that would be willing to build back there but doesn't need a lot of traveling public to make a living off of. And that's where that classification came from. And that's why it's never been zoned along 12 other than in the comprehensive plan. And that's my history lesson. And that's where we're at with this, to say, this is a landowner now requesting that we rezone it to commercial light industrial because he feels that'll fit his needs. Okay. And I agree with the concept of what this landowner is requesting.
I think philosophically, what you're saying too, in terms of just kind of going back, you know, it's a step up, from commercial. It provides, that down there provides a spot, for that kind of thing. And, we know there's gonna have to be more of that, commercial and light industrial at some point in time, and that's why the comprehensive plan allows for it going all the way down to
Oh,
there.
yeah.
But I think what that looks like right next to a residential neighborhood versus what it looks like, across the street, may be totally different, right? So, and I think that's, kind of a key.
And that's why the screening part of that, when it
Yes.
describes it, says it shall be. It doesn't say it might need to be, it shall be screened.
What do you think it should be zoned?
I think commercial light industrial, but I think that, the expectations, should be, I think as a person living in that neighborhood, I think it's good for the board to say, look, we're not gonna put anything in here that you wouldn't have expected when you bought that property. So,
I don't wanna look at dumpsters on my backyard.
well, that's the other thing.
Which is why I like the commercial light industrial, because I can say, those dumpsters better have brick around them and covered.
They have to be inside.
And so I don't have to see them on my backyard. That's where I'm worried, because if you go out on Ward Street, all those houses look at dumpsters. I'm not looking at dumpsters in my $600,000 home. So,
Right, yeah, the whole idea of everything being kind of inside of a building, I think is important. Well-designed dumpsters, we have that, which hasn't necessarily been watched as well as it could be in some cases, but I think that's an important one. And so everything kind of looks good, there's nothing out in the yard, so operations that are gonna expect to have stuff laying out in the yard just don't fit.
The other issue is the commercial thing, is we've talked about the hours of the day for
Yep.
functionality, but there's also another element there that I think we need to be aware of, and I'm sure we are, but you don't think about it until it's said, right? So with commercial, one of the issues that comes up when you're near neighborhoods is crime. Because there's a lot of riffraff, and we know it, St. Paul can speak to this loudly, that come in to gas stations, convenience stores and things that are open late at night and that kind of stuff. So that's a concern when, that no one had an expectation of that when you've got a truck stop and a gas station across the street from the truck stop right up the road. So that is the issue, one of the biggest issues about that commercial. That's the last thing I want in my backyard. That's the last thing I want in my yard. I have 4 mailboxes. My mailbox has been blown out 4 times since I've been there, and I've been there less than 3 years. And that's not even commercial right there, it's just a cul-de-sac. So,
yeah, that's
it's the least people that live down
Same
Prairie
kids that stole
Lane.
your street sign.
Oh, yeah, but we can't keep doing that.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, but
Yeah.
really it is a board discussion at this point, but I'm very flexible on having additional comments. I'm going to keep my comments very brief. I've spoken to that as my role as the town chair. I'm going to only go back in time just briefly. I've been here for many decades myself. It used to be when you came to the town, everything came in through special exception. And it was a subject to who was on the board at the time and what the votes were that you could get through. I think it's a tribute to all of the history, all of the people in our town, that we have ordinances in place that are very protective of property rights of individuals and homeowners. It's a very strong ordinance. And you can see that recurring thread through all of the zoning overlays that are there. The only other option that could possibly take place is we'd have to amend the commercial zoning ordinance and have each of these come in as a special use, and I don't think that's a good way to do it. I don't think that's a good
Turn your
alternative.
back to special.
And so all that leaves the applicant and you as neighbors is, okay, it comes in as a commercial use, and now you have a Culver's, or now you have a whatever. We don't have the say underneath light industrial. This gives us as a board on your behalf a lot of input on that.
You can't do that in commercial anyway, because any use not listed as permitted, not special exception, is prohibited
In which one?
in commercial. So you can't just
No, I'm saying the only, no, you're supporting my point. If we as a town, if you as neighbors said, we want this use that Mr. Hartman has come in with tonight, and we want it so badly that short of rezoning, we will amend the commercial ordinance to add one more permitted use to it. And that's the beauty of our ordinance. And we've amended it through the last 30 years. It's replete with where we made amendments that we've added or deleted, but that's all subject to public hearings as well. Here's the next point I want to make. I don't know if we can condition the rezoning on this or not. I think for Mr. Hartman to, what I heard tonight, if you'd be willing to work with us and with the neighbors as you put together your condition covenants and restrictions that are reasonable to you and to the neighbors, I think that would go a long way. As you work with them with white pines or whatever you do for screening, including Mr. Roll, I see he left, but he's your residential neighbor to the south. I think that would be a tremendous benefit to Harmony. I think there's a benefit that you are not only own the land, but you'll be there with your building. If you're going to build your building, you're not just an absentee landlord, you're there yourself. So those are my comments with respect to that. With respect to the gentleman tonight that had the protest on the 20%, we're respectful of your position too, and that's why that's in the ordinance. So we need to talk about this as a board. I think we could vote on this whatever way we do it if it's approved, and you could still file your protest. And if you're successful, then we'd have to redo it. But I guess I personally don't see us delaying this and going through that and waiting for an opinion from our attorney. But you're probably not going to be building in the next 30 days anyhow, and that's something we can take a look at. So with that, I want to throw that part out to the board to get feedback and to help me frame this out.
So in regards to the protest, currently, the acreage is set without it being parceled off. So right now, the acreage is 27.259. So I would not agree with the fact that you have 20% of the adjacent property. And obviously, I mean, you're my neighbor. I don't want, to.
Sure.
I just want you to think about the fact that what we're approving is this entire big line. We're not approving separate lots yet. So if you go to the lawyer, I have a funny feeling they're gonna say the same thing. But please go to your lawyer. Yeah.
Yep, it's
Please
just not
do.
clear in that.
Right, I just want you.
Acreage, footage.
Right.
Doesn't
That's
say.
fine. So the other thing is, I can't remember, I'm pretty sure commercial light industrial, I don't have it in front of me, and I read it earlier today. If we move forward with things tonight, are we able to put in a restriction of a use with one specific? I don't want to go in all the uses because there's a whole lot down there. But the whole, I personally think we should take it out of our ordinance completely. That shouldn't even be allowed in the town, is the whole sex stores and pole dancing places. Like, that just needs to
You know
go.
why that's there?
I
The
don't-
city got it.
Because the city got it, so
Don't do a damn
And
thing
guess who
about it.
shut down the cities?
No.
Me. So,
But the point, let me finish. So what the state said was you can't say we don't want one.
nope.
so we have to leave it in there?
You
Yes.
have to leave one. And it's, the only place it's allowed is in commercial light industrial. I say the only place. And when's the last time you saw a new bar bill?
I don't,
And so what,
yeah.
the point was, you restrict where they can go.
Yeah, so they need to have a 10-acre lot.
Well, it says
There.
there.
Excellent.
It says right
We're
here.
going to narrow the discussion down tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think we cannot condition our ordinance on a motion to rezone this piece of land.
Well, it cannot be located within 1,000 feet of any single family or two-family dwelling.
Okay.
So we tried to shove
So
that
you're gonna
collectively.
limit the
town tried
lots
to
that
shove
could
as
even
far
be
out.
used on much land.
Okay.
And it can't be within 500 feet of any
Daycare.
licensed, no, we don't even have it.
Yeah, we did.
No, because I'm reading what the conditions. Within 500 feet of any establishment licensed to sell or dispense beer or liquor either. So
Okay.
if, say that,
Quick trip or.
right,
That
say,
was-
so say you
that
get
was
to
a
the gas
long
station
time
and they're the convenience store and they ask for beer, Well, now you gotta go 500 feet from that, but they gotta be 1,000 feet from,
residents.
how many lots are they?
Right.
How many
But you
lots are
can't
they gonna
just say
fit
we don't
here?
want feet.
I just wanted to make sure, I didn't know if we could do anything or not. We could
Yeah,
just-
that's, we did that on purpose because of the whole left of center or whatever
Yes,
it
left
was
of
called or
We
whatever.
shut it down.
I know, but it took you 3 years to do
We
that.
had
It took me getting on the board to do it.
So the Cajun Club is not moving in there.
No, the Cajun Club is not moving in.
But, you know, just an added comment on this is that the county was just informed that they had to approve any application for adult entertainment within 30 days. Everything else has a longer period of time. So this is because of Supreme Court decisions. So that's why I think, you know, we have to be careful. And I think in terms of a neighborhood like this, when we talk about evenly applied rules as far as how late it's open, that kind of stuff, you know, that serves then, you know, it's gotta be fair. Let's put it that way. So to your point, you know, that would be benefiting, you know, you because you really don't want, you know, activity, you know.
Well, there's a whole lot that goes on at that truck stop. I can speak to that. I
Yeah,
worked
it's
there
gotten
for
better.
15
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
And
it,
it's a lot,
but
so.
what we would approve down there isn't the same as what we approve.
Right.
And that's,
I know.
you know,
Sounds good.
I know, I'm just telling you.
All right.
It's right there.
Okay. All right. These are excellent points, I just don't want to be here all night.
Why not, Don?
Any of these items?
I want to make.
It's already made.
It's made, it's
Oh,
made.
been made and seconded.
Call for the question then, if you wanna vote.
Okay. So, and Mike, I just want to ask you, because I'm going to ask you on the record, okay?
Yeah.
So you're willing to come back? Because this isn't going to be conditioned on the rezoning, this is something I want on the record. You'll come back with conditions and restrictions and reasonable things that you can talk to your neighbors about? And you'll work with Lenore or Denny and whatever, with Mary or Pines and whatever. And then with Doug's help, you'll come back to us and say, you know, we did our calculation when we stripped this, and I'm very respectful of what Doug said. You don't know exactly what's going on there, I understand that. But to get to whatever, generally, your parking lot might be 4 feet below the, generally, you'd have a berm 3.5 feet high. I think that's acceptable to us as a board, just so we have a general sense. You're not gonna have enough dirt to do a 12-foot berm. Correct. Okay. There's been a motion made and a second. We've discussed the fact that the gentleman has a right to protest, and he should, and we can respect that. Dan, you had another comment?
could we just ask maybe last time if the gentleman protesting would like to withdraw his protest for just right now until we here's what Mr. Hartman has in terms of his plan, or?
Because he already filed a protest.
Okay.
I just like an opinion from our attorney.
Yeah.
Well, let's vote on it, and I'll tell you what happens.
No.
After we vote.
After we
Oh,
vote.
I've
gotta vote, and then I'll tell
I
you.
still like an opinion.
Oh, absolutely. It
That's all.
just came in the last 10
Right,
minutes.
right, I'd like an opinion is all, even though if we're
Okay,
gonna get it.
so I'm ready to ask us to vote.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor of rezoning the property, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion's carried.
All right, so the motion carried 5-0. And it says here, shall not become effective except by favorable vote of 3/4 of those of the town board members voting. So we needed 4/5, and we have 5-0. So even if he protests, it still passes even with his protest because it's 5-0.
Okay.
Can we ask?
I still will ask him, but I'm just
Yeah,
telling
just
you
to
what it
verify that
says.
it's all the way around.
We'll
Right,
get,
that's all.
you know, here's
You make
why.
my point.
Here's why. We owe it to the neighbors, we owe it to this gentleman, and we've done everything by the book. And I think we've done it well collectively.
I think if the protest comes back that he's right, though, I would want to go back into a discussion.
Correct.
I know what you're saying, Vicki, I'm just saying that. I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying what the rule is. You guys
Right.
voted 5-0, so.
No, if it says in the future that it's only just
It's,
one,
it's 3/4 of the vote. You need a supermajority is what they're saying, so. If you didn't have a supermajority, then it's a different issue, but.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay. Discussion and action on IT support for the town.
Nobody, you got your stuff?
Everybody read it?
Yes.
Any background is just rugged the security issue.
Yeah.
Just a little bit why we're doing what we're
Jay
doing.
Botsky used to work for,
3M.
well, even before that, he was with, so I remember the name of this, he was an IT guy. So he's been an IT guy. for years. Unisys, and he used to help the gals in the office for years. Well, he's moved off, and he's no longer here, and he really didn't have anybody. And as a consequence, things have gotten old and outdated. And so they asked me what I thought, and I said, this guy on Air Front lives in the town on White Oak Lane, down in the south end off of Gilbert. Nice guy, I see him going all the time. He does a lot of municipalities around here, but he has quite a steep price. Then they got the office clerks got a Sunny Link out of Somerset because there's quite a few other people. I read that over. He does it for $120 without a monthly retainer
Yeah.
for a one-time, whenever we need it.
Yeah.
He
He went
does,
through
and he
a-
does many municipalities too.
Yeah, he went through our equipment here, made us replace a whole bunch of it last month because it was outdated and about to crash.
It's all done, Tim.
This guy, Sunset.
Sunny Lake.
Jim.
He took care of it, he's been
This guy.
absolutely wonderful. I've already called him on and off to.
Still wanna look at the Wi-Fi password?
Correct.
That's us.
You gotta talk to them and be
You
pleasant.
gotta wait until we don't have,
It sounds great. So we have two agreements here. One is the old, one is the new.
So both,
they're both new.
I would propose that we use Sunny Link systems.
So also to approve Sunny Link.
I move that we
Okay.
approve Sunny Link.
One second.
Okay.
Motion, second, without getting it done. So, okay,
I like,
get it?
I like the non-retainer. And so even,
I got nothing.
when Tim talked about having a Wi-Fi here, I go, we got Wi-Fi here? And they go, yeah, but we don't let anybody get it. And he said, so, he talked about whether he wanted to have a password or not, because people playing ball out there. He wasn't sure that he had to pick it up, but they thought it still should be Wi-Fi with password protected. So they just don't hand that out to
No.
everybody, so that you can't use it here. And so that's a board discussion if you want to get into handing that out or not.
I'm just gonna say the board should have.
Well,
Wi-Fi
once we
access.
get everything up and, we'll then buy our own and we'll download your stuff.
I work a lot on my laptop when I come here, and I wanna look at stuff.
We could talk about.
He's trying to work it out that we'll have something,
No.
but it's not there yet.
I'll go on my hotspot for you.
Can I use your hotspot?
Absolutely.
There you go.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so there's been a motion made and a second, and so Sunny Link Systems to accept this. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, next is discussion and action on park maintenance.
Last month, after we approved Marty for the lawns and Tim Minnick for,
Mike
Mike
Minnick.
Minnick for the
Park maintenance.
park maintenance. I called both of them and I talked to Mike Minnick and said, we're gonna approve for the park maintenance, but not for the lawn mowing. We proposed giving you a $16 per hour. He said, that's fine, but he said, the reason I did it on a monthly cost basis, when he originally came in with the proposal to do it, he was told that he was gonna make about $300-400 a month doing this based on the hours that he was gonna do. Well, he said, I don't get that many hours. And every park attendant that we've had has had the same issue when they've been quite a ways away. And one of the guys that just passed away, Swanee, was also from North Hudson, and he was pretty close. Mike Minnick lives in Edgewood. And as a consequence, to drive out here for an hour and a half and all the way back to Edgewood, he said, I don't hardly pay for my gas. He'd like to get paid from the time he leaves the house till he returns home on an hourly basis. So you'd be giving him maybe another 15 minutes to a half an hour total depending. So if he was doing mowing in the area, he'd pull up here and do it and you wouldn't be paying for that. But if he's gotta come from Edgewood, it might cost you half an hour more, $8. You know what I mean? I think it'd be cheaper to pay him a time than paying him mileage, driving back and forth. So I would propose that we pay him from the time he leaves home until he returns.
So just give them an extra half hour per
Right.
time, 15 out and 15
Correct.
back.
Correct.
So $16 an hour plus the half hour
Of
every time he
travel
comes.
time every time he comes. And if you agree with that, that would be my motion to approve that.
Sir, to the
I'll
board?
second that.
Okay, motion is second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion is carried. Okay, communications items for future agendas. I think we talked about the caucus coming up, we talked about the January 8th meeting coming up.
Yeah, I do have one in there. Did I put it in here? Ken Tennant.
He didn't show up to
Have we
plan
heard
commission.
anything on
No, he
that?
didn't go to plan commission, so
I heard from his equivalent of Doug Zoller, I forget his name, called me probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, asked about, hey, how does this work? Is there a cul, look at a cul-de-sac, give him our normal stuff. I haven't heard back.
I spoke to Steve Tennant, he was surprised that he didn't show up, so he was gonna talk to his brother, so.
Amanda's talked to him too, so
Oh,
we'll
just
see if they go
like
to
me.
plan commission or not.
Okay. I just was wondering if we'd heard anything since
No.
we're talking about future agenda.
That's the only thing I heard.
They have to go to plan commission
Okay.
first, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if we heard anything.
Can we have some discussion on that hotel, my Uncle Mike's,
No.
at some
I know
point?
what your concern.
There's nothing you can do about it.
I don't care about what's moving in there, but if they're gonna allow stuff to move in there like that, maybe they need to clean up their property a little bit. And also, there is that dog grooming business that seems to be running all day that nobody
I
really
asked,
knew about, and just moved in, and there's a dog groomer in a drive-through.
What did
And it looks-
say?
I don't know, I told Brian and,
Again, on an entry into our city, that hotel is storing cars there, they're storing equipment for,
can send Brian out there.
I mean,
Spenders,
there's sex, I mean, if they're gonna allow sex vendors move in there on a permanent or semi-permanent basis, and let them,
how can they
Maybe
move right
they-
next to a bar? That's
maybe
crazy.
they need to,
I don't know,
maybe
we
they
don't
need
have
to.
any
We
say.
don't have any say.
I don't get that either.
It's
That's-
supporting them.
Something,
The Woodbury
Yeah, you have to
contract.
sign, is that the Woodbury contract? Yeah.
guy saying this one with the holes in it.
That's Brian Ward.
Oh, I have one non-home ones right here.
Brian Ward.
I was waiting
Yeah,
for,
those are
I didn't
yours.
want to interrupt.
So just sign both of them.
So we're signing that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's our animal control contract
Right,
for
so we-
the
we
Humane
want-
Society.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Ken, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You can,
No, that's
you
okay.
can have
I
him
just-
call Brian and go out there
That's what I
and,
would like to do.
Yeah, okay,
Then.
okay. And all we were doing, this came through in the
No, that's
consent
fine.
agenda.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
and
we're
I
not
wanna make
gonna-
sure it's signed before I go. So.
all right, so we
Is
need
there a
to,
motion to adjourn? Or do you have any other communications?
No, I just agree with Ken, if you could have Brian go up there. Great.
and check on the dog grooming, because I asked him about that months
And
ago and we've never
Dog
had an
groomer has
answer.
been like, I've driven by there at 8, 9 o'clock at night, there's been someone there doing stuff, so.
Those are the, it's very driven.
All right. Think you want to follow up with Brian on that, or who's going to follow up with Brian?
You can, because I tried already and it didn't work.
Okay. Well, I'll get some action out of him.
I'm just saying, I've already asked and I still,
I brought it up, do you want me to do it? I mean, it's
you
something on your plate.
can, he'll do it.
I'll give him.
You want to hear? That's fine.
I was just teasing. Okay, anything else? All in favor of adjourn? Aye.
Who made the motion in second? Nobody.
I'll make the motion. but-
Second.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
Sure.
The stuff with the guy we hired to be the new dog guy in
You
January.
mean the contract you just signed in front of you?
from
No,
Cal-
that's for the Humane
They're not
Society.
Calmo. You know what I mean?
No one,
Oh, I'm not happy about that whole situation because that woman lied to her teeth and accused me of stuff that I didn't do. I'm not very happy about
So,
that.
are we gonna do anything?
I don't
They
think we
can't come and
need
do
to,
that
Tim,
by
okay, I
case.
just took it as a,
Don't open your mouth.
for your information only type
Okay,
deal.
okay, all right.
So,
Okay.
Okay, I think you
That's
just have
all
to
I
sign here and date here.
Thank
I
you.
think that was, yeah.
Okay, that's good enough by me. No.
Just your John Hancock.
God bless America.
I shouldn't have to.
I need to go.
Anyhow, so that's rezoning.
Meeting adjourned?
Yes.
This meeting